Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aubrey Lane. I'm the Secretary of Transportation for Commonwealth, Virginia, and welcome to today's workshop session for the Commonwealth Transportation Board for the month of May. I think we're in May, right? Every so often, we go to a different venue outside of Richmond, and so that the members can actually see some of the projects that are going on and get a better feel across the state as to what to expect. Of course, that's especially important this year. We're in the midst of our 6-year plan, and that'll be voted on in June. So we're right in the middle of our 6-year plan hearings. In fact, tomorrow night we're in Culpeper, then we're in Lynchburg, and then we're in Salem. And I forgot where we've been the last few weeks, but we've been pretty much all over the state. So very important. As I do with all meetings, before we start, I ask you to rise and say the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll have a couple of things that are a little different today. First of all, in a second, we have several new members. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. In fact, everyone introduce themselves, but particularly the new members. So we have make sure they are welcome. And also, obviously, we're going to be going through some items that are very interesting to many of you in the room. The Route 29 solution will be presented today. And today we are live streaming, but because we did not announce that we would have public comment today, we can have no public comment today, but we will have that tomorrow. In fact, there will be 2 chances for that tomorrow. One right before we start our formal workshop session, and then again tomorrow evening, and the 6-year plan. If you don't have enough fun, you can come back and hit us again, hit us again for that. But I want to let you know, I did get some requests that we could have comments today. I know some of the people can't be here today, but will be here tomorrow. Unfortunately, because of FOIA regulations, and we didn't advertise it, can't actually have a public hearing today, but you certainly can informally let us know, of course, why this, as we've always done, because just like when we did the 29 panel, trying to bring more transparency to these issues as we debate them in the public forum. I also have one bit of I have to excuse myself. I'll have to leave at 2:30, hopefully for no more than an hour. And quite frankly, it's a last Tuesday, at the request of Senator Warner and at the urging of Governor McAuliffe, I testified in front of Congress, the Senate Finance, about the solvency or potentially insolvency of the trust fund, the federal trust fund, which of course this state receives a little over $1.2 billion a year, which primarily we match with our construction program. So as we go through these 6-year hearings, that's very important to us. If that program is impacted, many of the projects, including some that we'll discuss today, may have to be adjusted. Because, again, it's over 50% of our construction program. So I'll have to, please excuse me, I'm going to go out and do a couple of interviews on behalf of not only Virginia, but all states about how important it is for our federal government to remain our partner in our transportation stuff. So I apologize to you in advance. One of the things that we're going to accomplish today is, for many of the new members, I wanted them to have a very good briefing of the major projects across the Commonwealth. So in addition to the Route 29, and I might add some that are a little, let's say, less than softly going across the Commonwealth, those that have been in the public view, I wanted them to have a clear understanding of what those projects were about. So we're going to start with Route 29, which I know is important to many of you here, but also Coalfields Expressway, the 460 project,
So those are projects that have been in the headlines, and I want to make sure they understand exactly what's going on as we go through the process of funding those or continuing those and where they stand. Now, getting ready to, before we start the presentations, I'd like to start down here with Mr. Dyke. And if you would take, first of all, welcome to everyone, particularly the new members. But Jim, if you take a minute to introduce yourself, and we'll go around and everybody kind of shot at that, so the new members feel like they're just one of the crowd.
So thank you very much. My name is Jim Dyke. I'm a senior advisor for Horizons Consulting. I'm also a Commonwealth representative, at least for the time being, on the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. So I have a transit background for this. I'm also a former Secretary of Education for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and most relevant for today's meeting, my family had a home here in Charlottesville area for 14 years. I taught part-time at the University of Virginia Law School, so I'm pleased to be back there.
My name is Court Rosen from Roanoke, Virginia. I am a private real estate developer. I'm also the vice mayor of the city of Roanoke, and I'm really looking forward to getting to learn about the transportation system, process, and timing. It'll be pretty fascinating so far, so I'm looking forward to this.
I'm Marty Williams. I guess my background is a former state senator from Newport News. I live in Richmond now. I was chairman of the Transportation Committee for 8 years. Transportation. I look forward to reconnecting with the stakeholders of transportation. Good lively group. Looking forward to reconnecting.
Hi, I'm Shannon Valentine. I am from Lynchburg. I am a former member of the House of Delegates. I served on the House Transportation Committee. I worked on getting the Northeast Regional, which is anchored in Lynchburg, going up to the Northeast. And I also served on the Governor McCullough's transition team on transportation. And I too am very happy to be here. I'm a graduate of MBA, and I will have 2 here next year. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
I'm William Craven, continuing the line of formers. I'm a former member of the House of Delegates, Transportation Committee, like the colleagues here. I've got one at UVA, and I'm representing the Salem District. I also live in Roanoke, and I'm glad to be here. I'm the President and CEO of Veteran Cities of America, which is a nursing company.
I'm Mark. I'm representing the African
I'm Charlie Kilpatrick. I'm the Highway Commissioner and Chief Executive of the Virginia Department of Transportation.
I'm Tom Assistant Secretary of the Board. If you need anything, you can contact me. I think I've touched base with all.
Gary Barzinski from Alexandria, Virginia, real estate developer, and I am the Northern Virginia District representative to the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
I'm Roger Cole, a former petroleum distributor, truck stop operator, had our business for about 30 years. I represent the Richmond District.
John McNamara, representative of the Richmond District, president of the Department of Real Estate.
I'm Vincent Whitworth from Winchester, Virginia, representing the Stanton District, retired bank executive with the VDOT.
Good afternoon. I'm Allison Tunt. I'm a Culpeper member, and I'd like to welcome you to the Culpeper District. I'm happy to be here today. I'm the president and CEO of the University of Virginia.
Scott Kasperwitz, urban at-large member from Northern Virginia, former Deputy Secretary of Transportation in the Kane administration. It's good to see so many familiar faces, and I look forward to working with the team.
Well, a special welcome to all the new members. Governor McCullough is pleased that you have joined us. We all are pleased that you've joined us and look forward to all working together as we go through some very important issues. Tomorrow, a very important one, House Bill 2, which will be presented tomorrow, and how that's going to be implemented in that regard. So we've decided a 6-year plan. We're going to put you to work. So welcome aboard. I must say, Ms. Valentine wanted to know if we got hazardous duty paid, to which I said we paid double what I was getting.
You can thank me for
You
asking.
get an extra cent. Okay, we're going to start the program, and before I ask Mr. Shukat to come up, I want to just make sure the board members understand what the charge was and what we're trying to accomplish here. This Route 29 corridor has been studied and looked at for well over 35 years. In fact, I mentioned at a previous meeting, I've gone back and read all the JLARC reports and the different things, findings over the years. And it's pretty clear that the solution needed here was multifaceted, and there was no silver bullet. The most recent thing that was on the table up until a few months ago was a proposed bypass about 6 miles, I think, around Charlottesville, that would not have solved the problem, but was beginning to address the issue. And I want to make it clear, no one project can solve this problem. That's just not me talking. That's over the years, about 35 years we've studied. Unfortunately, not as much has moved forward in those 35 years. We received word shortly after coming into office in the McAuliffe administration that the federal highways questioned the purpose and need for the bypass. Now, we never got to permitting. We never got to any of the other licensing. The Federal Highway Department said that the solution for the purpose and need was well over a decade old, if not longer, and that they did not believe that the solution proposed was worth the investment and did not meet the purpose and need, and they asked us to go back and look at alternatives. So I want to make clear, this is not an environmental issue. This was questioning from the federal authorities, our partners, why this money was being spent for this particular bypass. We never got to the permitting, which would have been substantial to deal with, because we had already heard from the Army Corps, there was a cemetery, there were lots of things in the way in that. So based on that, it was pretty clear that the bypass as envisioned was not going to happen. Just not going to happen, based on the Federal Highways rule. There are some that said we should have contested, and we've been doing that for 35 years. And again, I go back to the fact that not one project was going to solve the issue, nor had we done anything to really begin to solve the issue. So I briefed Governor McAuliffe based on his direction and his evaluation. We agreed that we would form a panel of many of the stakeholders up and down the route, because there are two issues to be dealt with: the congestion around and in Charlottesville and throughput through the area. So there were two things that need to be accomplished. And based on that group, we asked Philip Shukat, the former Commissioner of Highways, to chair the group. It was streamlined. They had several meetings, many questions, some questions, how can you figure this out? Well, we've been studying it for 35 years. I don't think anything else we're going to look at in the next 10 years is going to be any different other than making the problem worse. So that group got together. The intent of that was to reach, get good information as to what we were trying to accomplish. It did not necessarily mean there was a consensus. It did not necessarily mean that there was a vote. It meant to say, where was the common ground on all the issues that are involved, to see if we could come together for a package that would begin to address the issues. It will not solve the issues. It will make them better, but it will not solve all the issues. This is not meant to be the answer. It's meant to be part of the answer. So I want to make it clear, our work is not over. If you approve these projects, it doesn't mean that that's the last thing we have to do in Charlottesville. It doesn't mean that at all. But it means we start moving to a multifaceted solution that every study has pointed out was going to be required. There was not going to be one project. So that's what was the intent of this group, to coalesce around and come up with a recommendation. They have done that, and Mr. Shukat will brief us on that in just a few minutes. I have been briefed on the proposed package. It meets the criteria that we set out. It's something that can be started within the next year or so in terms of getting the project going. It starts to address mobility and congestion mitigation around the area. And it fits our financial parameters in that regard. So it was meant to be a practical solution to begin this process. So what I'm asking you today, when you hear this, I'm going to present to you a resolution that you will vote on next month. And that resolution basically says that based on Mr. Shukett's panel's work, these recommendations would be what is being recommended from the Commonwealth Transportation Board put into the 6-year plan. Contingent upon the local transportation planning organization putting it into their long-range planning 5 days specific. The reason that's because if they don't put it in their plan, we can't force anybody to. Many of these projects have federal monies, have to be long-range constrained. So that's what the recommendation will be. And if that doesn't happen, if they don't get it in the plan, now I've suggested September 30th, then these monies will roll into prioritization across the Commonwealth. In other words, it will, but that's what House Bill 2 requires us to do. If we don't have projects that are in the plan, don't have money on them, not agreed to, the governor's agreed, we want to leave the money in this district, but if it's not put in the plan by September 30th, then the resolution I'm asking you to consider would say those monies roll over into the state coffers and will be put on projects as they come through prioritization, which may or may not mean will be on these projects. On that. That's what the resolution will be, and that's what I'll be asking all of you as you go through this to think about for the next month to vote on in June. Okay. With that, Mr. Shukett, would you join us? I'm sorry. John, you're calling for John. I'm sorry. John, please come up to the podium.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, Commissioner Kilpatrick, Director Mitchell, and members of the CTB, I've been asked just to give some background and a timeline on the project, just to get some of the new members up to speed, as well as some background information before Mr. Shukett comes up. The 29 corridor is the only north-south highway linking the urbanized areas through and beyond central Virginia. The corridor is on the national highway system, and it's also one of Virginia's corridors of statewide significance. The project area is along the 29 corridor, just north of Charlottesville that we're talking about. And this section of the corridor is the most congested and has the highest number of crashes of any portion of the corridor between the Prince William County line and the North Carolina border, so excluding the Northern Virginia area. The selected alignment of the bypass, which is a 6.2 mile limited access roadway, runs on the west side of Route 29 from just south of the South Fork of the Rivanna River, right by the Doubletree Hotel where we are now, to the Route 29-250 bypass, just west of the city of Charlottesville. Some of the major intersections along the 29 corridor are shown here in the graphic, include Rio Road, Hydraulic, and the Route 29-250 interchange. The project would bypass about 14 signalized intersections along that 3.5 mile section along existing 29. So, really it went around some of the major urbanized areas in Charlottesville and Albemarle County. Just quickly, a timeline of events. The first concept of the bypass originated in the 1970s with a location study that started in 1987. It included 7 bypass options, an expressway option, and also mass transit options. In 1990, the CTB approved a phased approach to include the widening of 29, 3 grade separated interchanges, and right-of-way acquisition and construction of the bypass. This was reaffirmed in 1991. In 95, the CTB rescinded the 90 and 91 resolutions, eliminating the requirements to build the interchanges prior to construction of the bypass. In 1997, the CTB approved the bypass design, but in that case, the MPO did adopt the design but did not provide funds for construction. There was a lawsuit in 1998 from the Piedmont Environmental Council as well as the Sierra Club that resulted in a requirement to perform a supplemental EIS. That was completed, and the record of decision was issued in 2003. In 2011, the MPO amended the TIP and the CLRP, providing funds for the construction phase on the bypass, but a requirement was that the environmental document had to be reevaluated. In June 2012, the CTB awarded a design-build contract for the final design and construction of the bypass. And as the Secretary mentioned, in February 2014, the Federal Highway sent a letter indicating the purpose and need of the project. Bypass was no longer met, which halted work on the project. And just current allocations on the bypass include $244 million, with current expenditures of $54 million. The majority of which was spent on right-of-way acquisition, with the remainder on the environmental studies and the preliminary engineering. And this really brings us up to date with where we are on the 29 corridor.
Thank you, John. Welcome, Mr. Duquette.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Director, members of the board, I'm Philip Chouquette, and I'm here today to review with you activities over the last 8 weeks as they relate to the panel that was formed for the Route 29 Advisory Committee and and the recommendation that resulted from that work. The panel was composed of 10 members, 6 elected officials that represented the chair of the Board of Supervisors, mayors from Charlottesville, Culpeper, Lynchburg, and Warrenton and Danville. Also 4 organizational representatives, the Charlottesville Regional Chamber, the chair of the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO, the representative from the Lynchburg Regional Chamber, and a representative from the Southern Environmental Law Center. I thought it was important to remember that in addition to their elected and organizational capacities, these 10 people are also citizens that live here and for the better part of their lives and careers have been involved in one way or another in the Charlottesville transportation issue, including the bypass. So in addition to their professional roles, they also brought their personal involvement, experience, and knowledge to the table during the advisory panel meetings. We were supported by a technical team that was led admirably by Ben Manell from the Virginia Department of Transportation, Chuck Proctor, who's a transportation planning in the Culpeper District, Kevin Page is a rail and transit advisor, and Paul Prideaux and Susan Maines from the firm of Michael Baker International that also provided technical support and expertise. We held 4 meetings, Mr. Secretary, March 27th, April 10th, April 24th, and May the 8th. And by the kind consent of the panel, all of our meetings were held at the Virginia Transportation Research Council in Charlottesville, which really helped us out in terms of being able to be in one place and stream all of our meetings live. And I really appreciate and want to acknowledge the panel members who agreed to travel to Charlottesville each time for those meetings. Mr. Secretary, you directed us to be transparent. And I think we helped set some new bars for transparency with transportation in Virginia. All of our meetings were open to the public, even though they were not formal public meetings with public comment, and our room, to the capacity that we were permitted by the fire marshal, was full for every meeting. We video conferenced out to the Culpeper District and to the Lynchburg District. Our meetings were live, streamed live. We had over 820 total views of our meetings. The meetings were videotaped and made available on VDOT's YouTube channel. And as of Friday, we had 900 views. I looked this morning, there's a total of about 950. So it's either interested people or one person watching an awful lot. Public comment received through the website route29solutions.org. Again, as of the weekend, we had 156 comments. As of this morning, there's about another 30 that have been received through the website. So a lot of public involvement in new ways for us here in Virginia. We were really supported well in that regard by Ken Ruth, who made sure that we were streamed live and that these meetings were available for watching via video.
I should mention that led to these meetings being streamed live also. Our Commonwealth Transportation Board meetings will be live from this point forward also.
And in that regard, I'd really like to acknowledge our executive sponsor, Quentin Elliott, the Chief Deputy Commissioner from VDOT, who I believe brought this live streaming idea and said, we've got to do this more often. And I really congratulate Quentin and you and the Commissioner for taking that forward. Our first meeting on March 27th, each one of these meetings was about 2 hours long with a clear understanding that we would stay there as long as anybody cared to. Our first meeting was focused on developing some broad-based success factors and potential solutions. We looked at brainstormed 25 potential success factors, 16 potential solutions. At our second meeting on April the 2nd, we consolidated those success factors, which we'll review, to 8, and the potential solutions to 4 road options and 1 rail expansion option. At our third meeting, we took a closer look at the technical aspects of the 4 potential road options, and at our meeting on May the 8th, just last Thursday, we presented and discussed together a recommended solution package that we'll review with you today. The 8 success factors are not surprising. They focused around mobility, local and through mobility. They focused on safety, congestion areas, crash locations. They focused on minimizing impacts, minimizing the footprint to minimize social and environmental effects. We thought it was important to address multiple modes and to use technology where it could be incorporated, and we believed that it was very important to stay within the time frame and budget that we were given to work with, 4 years and a $200 million budget, and to produce a reasonable return on taxpayer dollars. Just very quickly, the 4 potential road solutions included the first was a throughway low-build alternative, which was essentially to take existing Route 29 and to convert an existing lane in each direction to through traffic. That would be coupled with eliminating left turns at certain intersections, the application of access management techniques, the consideration of bus service or bus rapid transit, and opportunities to improve bike and pedestrian mobility. I'll add that those last 3, access management, bus and bike ped considerations, are carried through in every package. The estimated cost of the throughway low build was somewhere between $50 to $100 million, and it was not expected that that would take any new right-of-way. Package 2 that we considered was a throughway option but a higher build. Rather than to take a lane, it was to physically separate through traffic from local traffic. It included the construction of 4 interchanges at 29, 250, Hydraulic Road, Rio Road, Airport Road, and the application of the last 3 that we mentioned previously. It was expected that this would cost somewhere between $250 to $350, and that some new right-of-way would likely be required. The last 2 options, 3 and 4, were parallel road options. Package 3 was a parallel road low build. It included all of the projects that are currently in VDOT's 6-year improvement program, Hillsdale Drive extension, the Best Buy ramp, the widening of 29 North, and the introduction and application of an adaptive signal system. It also included the Berkmar Drive extension from Hilton Heights to Town Center Drive, and access management, bus, bike, and ped. Was expected that this package would be somewhere between $100 to $200 million with no new right-of-way anticipated. The last package, the last road solution package was a parallel roads high build, included everything from parallel roads low build, plus the 4 interchanges at 250, Hydraulic, Rio, and Airport Road, plus the construction of some overpasses at Greenbrier, Hilton Heights, Ashwood, and Timberwood. It was expected that this package would cost of $200 to $350 million, with some new right-of-way possible. Those were the 4 packages that fell out of our initial screening process. And although the Secretary went through this, just to review the charge again before we get into the recommendation, on March the 27th, the Secretary showed up for about the first 15 minutes of our meeting. I went back and listened to that video a couple of times myself just to make sure I got his words right. And he said, we are, quote, trying to fix those 2 things, to start addressing mobility through the corridor and congestion in the corridor. The Secretary also said he didn't expect us to vote, and we didn't vote. The Secretary said he didn't expect everyone to say, quote, this is the best thing that ever happened, and I can assure you they didn't say that. The Secretary said we have to, quote, take the first step. And I believe I can say with some certainty that we did take a first step. The recommended solution package that we're going to review does not directly mirror any of the 4 options that were studied. It is a hybrid package. It is not unanimously endorsed by the panel, and we will discuss that. A throughway option is not the recommendation. The recommendation is built around a modified parallel roads option with the inclusion of some consideration for rail. The solution package. The first part of the recommended solution package is to fully fund all of the 4 projects that are in the current VDOT 6-year improvement program. Starting at the north, that's the full funding of the Route 29 North widening. It includes the full funding of the Hillsdale Drive extension, the full funding of the Best Buy ramp, and the full funding of the adaptive traffic signal systems. In the current 6-year plan, about $18.8 million is currently allocated to those 4 projects. To fully fund them requires an additional $43 million, and I would recommend that the CTB consider the inclusion of the $43 million for full funding. The next step of the solution package is the inclusion of an additional piece to the south of Hillsdale from Hydraulic south to Holiday to complete the Hillsdale Drive extension all the way from Holiday to Rio Road. That's an additional $10 million. The next part of the package is the inclusion of the Berkmar Drive extension from Rio all the way to Town Center Drive, and that is an additional $54 million. Tying these 2 parallel roads together is a recommendation that a grade-separated intersection be constructed at Rio Road. That is an additional $81 million, or a total of $145 million in new construction beyond the $43 million recommended to fully fund the 6-year improvement plan projects. It's also recommended that $10 million for preliminary engineering only be included in the 6-year plan to study the eventual grade separation of the Hydraulic Road intersection. And finally, it is recommended that 25% of the cost of an additional train set for the Lynchburg-Washington line be funded out of our budget at a cost of $5 million for the additional 25%. Now that brings our total package to $203 million, $198 million for the highway portion of the recommendation, $5 million for the additional contribution to an additional train set for the Lynchburg line. And I realize that's $3 million over, which is hard for me to recommend, but I think that is a prudent recommendation and within the discretion that the Secretary gave us. These projects are not new. There's not particular magic here. For those of you that are well familiar with these, the 6-year improvement program projects, the additional construction projects, including PE for hydraulic and the rail line, are parts of various plans through the planning process. All of them were part of Places 29. Some of them, as we mentioned, are already in the 6-year improvement program. Some are already in the MPO's TIP. Some are already in the MPO's constrained long-range plan. So I wanted to be clear that these projects weren't invented by the panel. They have come up through a planning process. I think it's important to take a closer look at the Rio grade separated intersection for a few different reasons. If you're on this particular slide at your computers, the top is what Rio Road looks like now, approaching from, well, Rio Road actually isn't in this picture. It would be just off the upper right-hand corner. The top is how 29 looks from the south approaching Rio Road. The bottom is an example of how the transition to the Rio Road intersection would look. And I want to add that all of these conceptual views aren't just drawings to make them look nice. They're based on some engineering calculations that have been developed to create the rendering. The next picture at the top, again, at the very upper right-hand corner, you see the existing Rio Road intersection coming down toward the middle of the page. You see the existing traffic light at the intersection at Fashion Square Court. At the bottom, you get an idea of what the grade-separated transition would look like. What was a full traffic signal at Fashion Square is a right in and right out. We'll talk about that more later. And up in the upper right-hand corner, you see the grade-separated intersection. This is a closer look at the grade-separated intersection itself. Again, the top is what's out there today. The bottom is an idea of what the grade-separated intersection would look like. And this is just a full view of the grade-separated intersection itself. It basically permits existing through traffic to travel through the intersection while maintaining all of the turn lanes for local traffic up on the at-grade section of the intersection itself. This could be planted as shown. It provides for some safer pedestrian access across the intersection itself. This is an early concept that would be studied further in design as the project moved through the design phases. The grade separation at Rio, as I mentioned, maintains the same number of local access turn lanes that are out there today. It maintains 3 full access points to Fashion Square Mall, 1 full access from 29, 2 from Rio. 1 existing 29 access would become right in, right out. Maintains 1 full access to Albemarle Square, 1 from Rio, and 1 current access point would become right in, right out on 29. Going back to our 8 success factors as these projects apply to them. The first success factor was improve local mobility. And in my opinion and judgment, all of the projects serve to improve local mobility. Our second success factor was to improve through mobility. The Best Buy ramp, the addition of the merge lane to the Best Buy ramp, the railroad grade separation, the hydraulic preliminary engineering, the 29 North widening, an additional train set for our Lynchburg, Washington line, and the adaptive signals do, in my judgment, contribute to improving through mobility. Address the worst congestion areas, and on the next page, address the highest crash locations. Hydraulic is in the center of the highest congestion area and the worst crash location. And I believe that starting to look at hydraulic through preliminary engineering addresses that success factor. The Best Buy ramp certainly does. The railroad grade separation, railroad is in the cusp of the worst congestion areas and the highest crash locations. That grade separation certainly begins to address that, as do the addition of the adaptive signals. Minimizing social, economic, and environmental impacts. These projects have come through a planning process. That's important. We can minimize the footprint of the grade separation and all of the additional construction projects as mentioned. Multiple modes and incorporating technology. The adaptive signal timings do incorporate new technology. The funding of an additional train set or contribution to that funding recognizes a multimodal solution in the regional corridor. Implement within 4 years and stay within our budget. Construction and the beginning of PE for hydraulic can all start within 4 years. Now, VDOT will certainly be looking more closely at this in terms of sequencing, but all of these projects can be underway or substantially underway, which was our charge, within 4 years. And as I noted, we've gone a smidge over $200 million, but within the discretion that the Secretary allowed us to work within. Do they produce a reasonable return on taxpayer dollars? In my opinion, yes. Not everyone is going to agree with that, and not everyone does agree with that, and that is certainly understandable. The representatives from the city of Danville and Lynchburg and the Lynchburg Regional Chamber of Commerce do not support a package that excludes the grade separation at Hydraulic Road. Those individuals would have preferred that funds from the northern extension of Berkmar, as well as funds from the new Ravenna River Bridge, be shifted over to Hydraulic Road to more fully fund construction at Hydraulic Road. On the other side of that coin, the representative from the regional chamber in Charlottesville does not support a solution that includes either a grade separation at Rio or Hydraulic Road. And that particular representative, on behalf of the chamber, continues to encourage funding for the consideration of a future alternative highway beyond the current or the former bypass limits. So I want to be very clear that the recommendations that I reviewed are my recommendations based on input from the panel, and this certainly is not supported in its entirety by all members of the panel. I also want to state, though, that these 10 individuals were engaged in straight talk and contributed in a terrific way to the deliberations that took place in 4 meetings over 8 weeks. Why does it matter to focus on Rio now, and why should this grade separation be adopted as an integral piece of the total solution package? Not to mix jargon or gibberish, but in terms of level of service, this simple graph spells out a picture that is underlain with a lot of analysis. The bottom arrow with the steepest slope that is red, isn't it, Charlie? Thank you. The steepest slope on that bottom line is a representation of how the Rio Road intersection operates today. It operates at a poor level of service that is only going to get worse for through traffic and local traffic as time goes on. As a matter of fact, it gets below eventually a level of service F, which essentially means a clogged, congested situation around the clock. With the implementation of a Rio grade separation for local traffic, the middle arrow, that intersection works well, as you would expect for an intersection that is governed by traffic signals. And it continues to work well beyond 2035. The white space between the red line and the middle line is all benefit in terms of improved operation of the intersection. Yes, sir.
Is the level of service A with the free traffic bill, is that for the whole study area or just for Rio interchange?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Williams, that would be through the Rio Road grade separated intersection. So for the traffic, the local traffic at the intersection, service is improved. For through traffic, it's improved to a great deal through the intersection because there is no longer any impedance for through traffic. So at that particular intersection, in addition to kind of connecting the parallel road on the east and the west, travel for traffic through this intersection as well as at this intersection is improved over the next 20 years. Why is it important, in my opinion, to proceed carefully at hydraulic before fully funding construction? In relative terms, Rio is a straightforward project. Hydraulic just simply isn't. I also think it's important particularly to the businesses in this quarter, to demonstrate that Rio can be delivered and delivered flawlessly before embarking on a more complex intersection project. And hydraulic is complex. Some would say they think. I am rather certain that once you get into hydraulic, you're going to need to look at its relationship and connection to the 250-29 interchange as well. I also believe that to deliver hydraulic, a robust business, public involvement, and effective communications are vital to further assessing hydraulic as part of your statewide project prioritization process that is required by House Bill 2. I'll leave you just with a few additional thoughts before closing. I think it's important that the CTB and the MPO consider this as a total package. These are not pick and choose projects from a menu. I think it's important and part of the responsibility of the cities, the MPOs, the Commonwealth Transportation Board, DRPT, and VDOT to continue to engage effectively in a long-range transportation planning process, wherever that might take you. I mean, that's your job, is to continue to look out into the future. I think Charlottesville, and this should include Albemarle, Charlottesville, Albemarle County, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and VDOT should continue to find opportunities to expand and improve transit services, and where those transit solutions are effective, the CTB should continue to fund them, and they should be continued to fund locally as well. In keeping with a policy that the CTB adopted, you should continue to look at the improvement of safe bike and pedestrian opportunities as part of every project. Access management policies that you've adopted and that are adopted as part of the administrative guideline process in Virginia should be used to protect not only the integrity and value of existing Route 29, but of a future Berkmar Drive extension as it is constructed. I believe that number 6 is very important because the issue of Arroyo Road grade separation in the 29 corridor is controversial. It's of great concern to the businesses in the 29 corridor, and I believe that as you are delivering this project, it is important that you include a panel of business owners and community leaders to effectively participate in the delivery of the grade separation project. Not to debate it, but to contribute to its delivery. I think that you have to deliver Arroyo flawlessly, Mr. Commissioner. You've got to keep your eye on the ball and move this project along well and demonstrate that it can be delivered with minimum disruption and maximum effectiveness. I think I learned that using panels to solve problems is really neat. Using them to avoid problems might be something that you want to consider as you move on into the future. As I mentioned, I found this panel, these 10 individuals, to be, to a person, upright, forthright, and very open and honest with their feelings, and their ability to contribute is certainly well recognized. Finally, across a career of a few years now, particularly focused on projects or businesses that are troubled, I don't think I've run across a situation where a transportation project has been, the only word I have for it is debilitating to a community and to a region. It's time to move past that. It's time to suture up the wound. I would strongly encourage you to sell this existing stand that they were there as perhaps part of an agreement that they would be funded along with the bypass. It's not that panel's issue, or that panel is not to, did not cause what eventually happened with bypass. Those 4 projects are currently funded at $18.8 million. It takes 43 to finish them, and that includes $18 million to extend 29 North, the 29 North project south to Polo Grounds. And I believe that it's prudent. We included consideration of those projects in our package, and I believe they're a prudent part that contribute not only to reduce congestion for local traffic, but beginning to address mobility through the corridor.
Is there any revenue sharing money anywhere in this Hillsdale project or any?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Fralin, I did not, nor did the panel, get into looking at where the sources of particular funding might come from.
And Mr. Fralin, we'll confirm this, but I believe that Hillsdale did have revenue sharing. I'm not aware of revenue sharing on any of the other projects that are funded. I do believe there was some revenue sharing on this. And then the last piece, and this is just an observation, and I know we can't make these decisions in a vacuum and act like the NPO doesn't exist, because they control the federal portion of this. If we're going to use federal money, we've got to get it. I understand it. But I also am a little concerned if we're making a decision based on the fact that the NPO won't agree to anything else. Because if the NPO is satisfied with the through traffic situation and is not willing to address that, then what are we really doing? Trying to do it, to try to address it at all? I mean, because what I'm trying to figure out is if we're doing one interchange here, and a lot of other stuff was already on the plan, and we're going to spend $100 million or so to do it. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is accomplished.
Yeah.
And if you know he's not going to do it, they're not going to do it. That's up to them.
Well, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Fralin, the MPO in their letter indicates support for the railroad grade separation and the preliminary engineering money to begin to look at hydraulic. And personally speaking, I think that's substantive. I think that's a substantive recommendation from the MPO. On the other side of that, the Charlottesville Regional Chamber would prefer we not do Rio Road or hydraulic. And I guess I'm just not inclined to take either one of those full positions. I believe we can start with Rio.
Any other questions from the board? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shukat, and for the panel. Hard work and a compressed schedule, I think you did a fantastic job. And all of us involved, really putting their heart and soul into working towards a solution that I think we all believe is deliverable. And that's an important piece here. This package of projects that can be delivered and can be delivered in an expedited way. So again, thank you.
Well, you're most welcome, Mr. Commissioner. And I would just say again, and not to be redundant, but these 10 people to a person were outstanding in their contribution, just absolutely outstanding, as was your technical team and your technical team, Director Mitchell. You should pat them on the back for showing just how much work can be accomplished in 8 weeks, because they weren't getting much sleep. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Next presentation is on yes, sir.
I assume or hope that we'll be providing copies.
Yes, absolutely.
It's important. Just for understanding a lot more than we do right here, just in
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And again, I think what the Secretary is asking in consideration for resolution in June meeting to be back in part of the updates here. But we'll make sure that the package, it both wants additional material. There was a lot of material that was generated as part of the process. We'd be glad to provide that. A lot of it, I believe, is on our website. Most of it is. And again, we provide it with Hey, welcome. Railway Express System Plan 2040 update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman Kilpatrick, members of the board. It's a pleasure today for me to bring to you another briefing on public transit and rail from the DRPT. Today, Doug Allen comes to us as the Chief Executive Officer of Virginia Railway Express, and I have the pleasure today of introducing him to the board and also to Virginia. It seems like just yesterday that Doug reported for duty as the CEO at VRE, but it's now been 18 months have flown by since Doug came to us. But it's been a swift 18 months. Doug came to us at VRE with 37 years of transit planning professional experience. Most of his tenure of the 35 years of that has been spent in Texas, both his time at a Council of Governments, Dallas area rapid transit for 23 years in the commuter rail and long-range and strategic planning business, as well as setting up Cap Metz in Austin's commuter rail operation and running that for 5 years. I think one thing I can say about Doug Allen is he's not only a very good planner and a strategic long-range thinker, but he knows how to balance long-range thinking into the short game of running almost 20,000 people in and out of the District of Columbia on a daily basis. I think Doug has brought to the table as well a vision with his VRE system plan, as he started last July with a strategic planning retreat with the board, and now we have a very well-balanced VRE system plan that Doug's going to share with us today. So no further ado, Mr. Vice Chairman, Doug, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to come here today to brief you on VRE. I know some of you last year at your Fredericksburg meeting had a chance to ride our system for a little bit, and we really appreciate that. All the new members, anybody who'd like to go out and experience it firsthand, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to set something up for you. Our VRE system is something we're very proud of and something that we want to expand. So we started about a year ago, as Kevin mentioned, with charting the course of how do we expand this successful system. For those of you who got a chance to ride it last year, you've seen what the trains look like. This is for the new members. They're locomotives pulling double-decker cars. We have trains up to 7 cars long. We can have trains up to 10 cars long. I also picked this picture because it's kind of emblematic of the image that we want to extend to our current riders and to our future riders, and the tagline kind of says that it's a better way to a better life. And so this image kind of indicates that, and it's besides a really cool picture of a train, so we like putting it up there. VRE cannot exist without partnerships, and that's true in a lot of different endeavors, but it's especially true with our service. We were created with between 2 transportation commissions, the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission and the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission. 25 years ago, they saw the need to implement commuter rail in the region and began the process of doing that. I actually worked for both commissions. We serve 9 jurisdictions, all the way from Fairfax County down to Spotsylvania County. We also operate on what we call 3 host railroads. The CSX Railroad and the Norfolk Southern Railroad are 2 private railroad companies. They make profits, they run freight, and as well as we operate on Amtrak into Union Station in the District of Columbia. It's important to make a distinction in that, because a lot of work that you're doing is dealing with public-private partnerships, and VRE is a form of a public-private partnership because we work very closely with those private railroads to deliver that service to the public. Another key partner in VRE is the Commonwealth, and the funding that you provide to us through different programs that are in DRPT. In your 6-year plan is funding agreements for the next several years for paying the CSX and Norfolk Southern to allow us to use their tracks, as well as to pay them for maintenance of the tracks and dispatching of the trains on those tracks. So we thank you very much for that, and without that we would not be able to deliver the service that we deliver. We also are very grateful of the capital grants that we get to improve the infrastructure, to make sure we have new trains, and that has led us to getting over a 95% on-time performance for our trains because of the reliability that we now have with our new equipment. And that goes a long way to attracting more riders to our system. We have 2 lines, the Manassas line and the Fredericksburg line. The Manassas line roughly parallels I-66. The people that use our train, if they weren't using our train, would try to vie for the space on I-66, and the same on I-95. We're just a few miles east of I-95 on the Fredericksburg line. The line's about 35 miles from the end of the line of Manassas to the district. It takes about 45 minutes for us to get there, and we run 8 trains in and 8 trains out during the day. On the Fredericksburg line, it's 54 miles. It takes about 80-some minutes to get to downtown from Fredericksburg. And we run 7 trains in and 7 trains out. This is where the people come from, and this is where they go. We locate the stations near the population. Over 90% of our riders get there by driving a car and parking there. Our destination stations are largely from Alexandria into the district. Our heaviest station is LaFont Plaza because it's right in the middle of downtown. It's got good access to Metro. 25% of all of our riders get off of VRE and get on to the Metro system to complete their journey, but 75% walk to their final destination. Our second heaviest station is Crystal City, and not only do people go to work at Crystal City, but they also access Metro to go to work at the Pentagon, go to work at Roslyn. So we bring people from the I-66 and I-95 corridor and deliver them to this very dense urban area. Our profile is shown here of who our customers are. We have 4.5 million customers a year. As Kevin pointed out, it's about 20,000 riders a day. They're very satisfied with our service. 88% of them are highly satisfied because of the cleanliness, the on-time performance. And again, for those of you who had a chance to ride our system, we didn't put a special train out there. That was a train that just came out of service, and so you saw the quality of the ride associated with it. It's a fairly affluent customer base. A large percentage of our riders make over $100,000 a year, have more than 1 car. They work typically for the federal government and contractors. The point of this slide is to show that they're choice riders. They have a choice. They choose to ride VRE because they don't want to fight the traffic, and the service is reliable and comfortable. The other point of this is there's a lot more of them out there like this, and what our need is to add capacity. We're virtually at capacity, and the more we can do to get others like our current customers on the trains, the better it is for trying to serve the 95 and 66 corridors. Congestion in Northern Virginia is legendary, and that's not a good thing. We're identified by the Texas Transportation Institute, who does this nationwide, as the worst congested region in the country. And so 66, 95, and 395 are some of the most congested corridors in the Commonwealth. And those are the corridors that we serve directly. It's something that the entire region is focused on. HB2 that you talk about all the time deals with congestion reduction. What can be done to prioritize projects to reduce congestion? And that's clearly what our focus is how can we help put people into our trains and relieve the congestion. In addition to the congestion that's there, the population is growing. We're expecting to get over 1.5 million more people moving to the region. In some parts of our corridors, out in the southern parts, in the Spotsylvania County, there's a lot of growth potential, upwards of 90%, almost doubling the population that's out there now. And the jobs that they're going to are increasing, both in the Alexandria and Arlington area, 40% increase, and in downtown D.C., even though it's very heavily employment-based now, 22% is projected to be the growth in downtown D.C. So the growth is coming, and we need to be prepared to meet it. This is a slide that I'd like you to remember among all others, even though those slides with the pretty pictures are good, but this is the slide I really want you to zero in on. TTI, Texas Transportation Institute, did some research on the impact of VRE to congestion relief. The findings are summarized here, that with the growth that's coming, congestion is going to be inevitable. The contribution that VRE provides in terms of congestion relief is significant and could be greater if it's expanded. Currently, the existing ridership on VRE contributes to travel time delay reduction of between 8 and 20% in both of those corridors, in the 95 and the 66 corridor. That's a huge, significant impact. And the reason for that is it's where our service is in the 66 and 95 corridor, and when our riders are on the train and not in their car, which is right during the peak period. So as you look at solving congestion around the Commonwealth, the issues that you're trying to deal with are in the peak hour, person miles in a congested corridor, and that's exactly what we do. The TTI study also indicated that by doubling our ridership, which is the goal of our system plan I'll tell you about in a second, it would reduce the delays in those corridors by up to 14%. That's a huge amount of congestion relief by doubling the capacity and doubling the ridership on our system. The dashed line, the dashed gold line, shows previously what our capital improvement program had identified for capacity, and we were on track to basically top out and level off and keep the level of ridership that we have. However, there's a great potential out there, and so the plan was created to help identify the projects necessary to continue that upward growth, to allow us to provide more service and get more cars off the road to relieve the congestion in 95 and 66 and partner with the Commonwealth, because I know you're doing a lot of things already and really good things in both of those corridors to add capacity with the managed lanes, and the 66 study is about to identify some other unique things. So again, part of partnership is we want to help address the capacity needs that are out there. So a year ago we started the development of plan to prepare for that future. We identified 3 phases for incrementally growing our system, some starting pretty simply by just simply adding more rail cars onto the locomotives that we have. Some get a little bit more intensive. The key to adding the significant capacity is adding capacity to the railroads that we're on, to the CSX railroad primarily. The more capacity we add for them, they get to use it, we get to use it. The intercity trains that you partner, that you pay for, get to use it, and that's the key to it. And also, as we get more service out there, we'll be moving from commuter rail into more of a regional rail system. The types of things that are in the system plan sound kind of mundane, but they're very, very important. Track and signal improvements. Adding a third track, and in some cases a fourth track in this corridor, particularly the CSX, is important. Crossovers are where a train moves from one track to another track, and there's a lot of signalization that goes with it. When you look at a railroad, it looks like it's a set of tracks, pretty simple. It's very complex. There's a lot of electrical devices and signalization that goes into operating a railroad safely, and there's a lot of work in that regard. And bridge expansions, there's been a lot of work already on third track in the CSX corridor, but there's a lot of bridges out there that need to be expanded. Now, fortunately, and again, this is another example of partnerships, DRPT is advancing a preliminary engineering and environmental study from Richmond all the way up into D.C. for high-speed rail. It's called in our section of it, it's called the Richmond area to Potomac segment. So we met with Jennifer and her staff and Kevin just last week to begin discussions about how, as DRPT is advancing that effort, laying out the track that will go out there and the bridges that will go out there, how we can help facilitate that and move it along in partnership along with the CSX Railroad. But track improvements are extremely important to accomplish what we're looking at here. Obviously, having more trains and longer trains adds capacity, and associated with that, longer platforms so that people can use and get access to those cars. And then storing the trains, both at the end of the lines down in Spotsylvania County and out in Prince William County by the Manassas, as well as in downtown D.C. One of the key bridges that we will be focusing on is called the Long Bridge, and this is the bridge that parallels the 14th Street Bridge going from Virginia into the District of Columbia. I've got a blue arrow pointing at the swing span. It doesn't swing anymore; it's all rusted shut. But that structure that you see there in the upper left it used to swing so that boats could get up and down the Potomac. It's a two-track bridge. It looks rusty. It is rusty, but it's very solid. It's a solid a bridge. What we need to do is add capacity across the river. We need to add at least 2 more tracks going across the river. We've got the ability to add up to 4 tracks in the Virginia section. There's 4 tracks potential on the other side of the river, and so the pinch point is right here. So we're partnering with the District Department of Transportation to advance a study to narrow down the alternatives and eventually get a recommendation on what's the preferred alternative. I believe Jennifer and her staff will also be participating in it because, again, it's a key need for moving trains from Virginia into the District of Columbia. We also will be seeking federal funds to offset the cost of this. In the federal program, and Aubrey mentioned that there needs to be a reauthorization, but in the current program that we think will continue is a program called Core Capacity. And so systems like ours that are at capacity, we can compete for funds to add more capacity to our core and carry more riders. And so we're very interested in pursuing that along with the Commonwealth and with our jurisdictions. The Long Bridge is a huge project that you'll hear more about. Other elements in our program are adding some new services, adding new stations. The Potomac Shore Station is in Prince William County. It's being funded by a private developer, and in that partnership and creativity mode, that private sector money is being used to match a grant that's in your 6-year plan for some second platform stations in Stafford County, and that's in your 6-year plan. And again, I appreciate the creativity that Jennifer and Kevin exhibited with us to advance that in the 6-year plan. The dashed line in the upper left corner of this, leading from the Manassas line, is another extension going out to the Gainesville Haymarket area. A fast-growing area, a lot of ridership potential, immediately adjacent to I-66, As we extend out into that area, it makes our system a lot more accessible, takes even more people off of 66, again, showing how we can be a participant and a partner in helping to address the 66 corridor. As the previous speaker says, not one of these things are going to solve everything. We all have to be doing our part, and that's why we want to try and double our ridership in VRE to accomplish that. Parking, the total estimated cost over the next 25 years is $2.7 billion. We hope a lot of that comes, of course, from the federal government as well as the state government as well as the local jurisdictions. And I should mention that the regional funding that was created a year or so ago, we've done well in competing for that for the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority funding. Our entire system isn't located in the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority area, but the parts that are, we're competing for those regional funds as well, because what we're doing is adding capacity, which is what that fund is for. The advantages of VRE expansion is it's cost effective. Relative to other things we can do in the corridors, it's relatively affordable. As you know, when you're dealing with your transportation projects, acquiring the right-of-way and all the implications that go along with it are challenging. The advantage is the right-of-way that we'll be building in is already there. It's owned by the private railroads. We're adding additional tracks in that right-of-way. With that comes fewer environmental challenges. It doesn't eliminate environmental issues, but it does reduce it, reduce the amount of time and reduce the amount of work that's necessary. And it complements the other investments that you're making in those corridors. So in summary, we're important to our part of the Commonwealth. We're important to the entire Commonwealth. We saw a need to develop some actionable long-range plans, and that's what our board has done within the last year. We see it as a very cost-effective investment. Studies have shown that we reduce congestion, and we can reduce even more congestion. We provide, when we're in operation, we provide the equivalent of 150 lane miles within the 66, 95, and 395 corridors. And if you were to think about going and implementing 150 lane miles in those corridors, you can just imagine how expensive that would be. So we're a good investment. We're ready to expand the system along with our host railroads, this organization, this board, and our friends and colleagues at the DRPT. And we see that this investment is going to provide long-term dividends to not only Northern Virginia and to our riders, but also to the Commonwealth. I've provided contact information. Please get a hold of me, and I think together we're going to be able to provide more service and let more people have a better way of getting to work and hopefully a better life. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Mr. Commissioner, this is not so much a question, but an observation. I also sit on the ETC, and the number of questions are about VRE. It means our same job. It's important to understand that. It's also important when he talks about the potential for expansion. I think there is a tremendous potential, especially as you mentioned Haymarket and Gainesville, and we really ought to be, as a board, learning a little bit more about what the potential is for VRE. And finally, we should also be aware of the fact that Doug has talked about this already. He mentioned today. There was a lot of discussion in North Virginia, especially in the business community, about expanding the run of VRE, go from Virginia through Union Station into Maryland. A number of Virginia citizens are now also, because of shifts in some of the federal jobs, are working in Maryland, and vice versa. The market coming into Virginia as a way of also helping to deal with some of the issues up there. While it's not in front of this board at this moment, I think it's important that we on the radar screen that these things unfold and keep that in mind as these discussions take place. Thank you for what you've been doing for this book.
Mr. Kaczynski, Mr. Cole.
Doug, could you expand a little bit on where we are as far as the lines crossing in terms of volume coming out of the origin station and being adequately able to serve the interim stations? Are we already at a crisis at that point?
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Good question. What Gary's talking about is as we fill up our trains in the outer stations and we get them to the inner stations and there's not a lot of room on the cars, are we turning people away? And the answer is we're not yet turning them away, but we're getting very close. That's one of our challenges. There are seats, but they're spread out over 7 cars. It's hard for people to find a seat, so there's a lot of standees. And the commuter rail, It's not like the metro system. Metro, you go on metro in rush hour particularly, you're going to stand, you just know you are. Commuter rail, we don't want to do that. So that's one of the reasons we want to expand the capacity, add more seats, and also when we get more train slots, when we have the ability to run more trains on the private railroads, we can start introducing other kinds of services like express trains. So they fill up in these stations and go express further into the corridor, and then an empty train shows up where it left off. We have one of those now on the Fredericksburg line, very popular, leaves at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's full because it's very popular because it's express. So that's a very good question, and yes, as we get the ability to add service and add trains or add cars to our trains, we'll start addressing people not having the chance to get on the train in the closer in stations.
Director Mitchell, I would also ask that you somehow expedite the dialogue with, I think it's Norfolk Southern, on the capacity to expand out the Gainesville Haymarket, because we seem to be at an impasse or really in a limbo for a few years on that. I mean, it's something that I know Thelma was working on, maybe Kevin might want to address it. But if we could get that going, I think we have some developer potential partners who could almost fund the station like County Shores is out in that area.
If I could just address that, again, that's because it is owned by a private railroad, Norfolk Southern. We're very sensitive to that and very understanding of that. We're reaching out to the Norfolk Southern to make sure they know that we know that they own the right of way and that we want to work with them on it. Jennifer and Kevin have been very helpful in helping us dialogue internally about the issues. And I know that the Commonwealth has funded a lot of other improvements that aren't really in our area, but will relieve the need or relieve some of the train congestion and really help us get access to that right of way. And so both Jennifer and Kevin have been very helpful in understanding that dynamic. And so we're hopeful to be able to advance that with the Norfolk Southern and with DRPT to be able to accomplish that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Allen?
Yes, sir.
On the Fredericksburg line, how much additional service would it take to move the level of service on I-95 up one level?
Well, the calculations that TTI has done for VRE on this service indicates that if we double the service, it'd be 14%. And I would be more than happy to ask them to do the specific calculation that you're asking about in 95, because they have that capability of doing. I didn't ask them on a level of service, but I'd be more than happy to ask them that.
Yeah, from a point of reference, I'm not familiar with this 14% represents moving it from DOT. How many steps is that? And doubling the service would come at what cost? What investment?
The overall estimate for our entire system plan is $2.7 billion over the next 25 years. I should point out that $1 billion of that is earmarked for the Long Bridge itself, simply the Long Bridge. And I think that's going to be such a unique project that'll have to take a funding source by itself.
No, I understand that. What I'm trying to come in on is to affect a change in level of service on 95. What investment?
Yes, sir. Roughly half of the cost will go because of the 95 improvements, and the other half will be going on the Manassas line. We will operate both as a team, of course. So I would look at it as the $2.7 billion would be needed to be able to deliver double the capacity in our system over 25 years. And I think that the trade-off would be what other improvements could be made in the 95 corridor, particularly to see that type of a 14% reduction, and what's the cost of that if you could do it, because again, right away is pretty much been used up. But we'd be more than happy to work with Charlie and with Jennifer to do some more calculations along those lines. I think those are very good questions.
Mr. Control, I think that at least I'm hearing really about the difference between doing rail improvements versus highway improvements. I think in terms of, at broad scale, we look at the VRA carrying about 10,000 trips on the Fredericksburg lines. Is that right?
Right.
I think in most of those trips, if you think about those are peak hour trips. It's not spread over a 24-hour period. So the thought is it's approximately a lane of traffic today is being taken up by VRA. Again, about 5,000 motorists in the morning, about 5,000 in the evening. The capacity of a lane is right around 2,000 vehicles an hour, and that's really in fairly unstable flow. So you think, again, thinking in those numbers, over a 2.5-hour period of rush hour, you're taking that, you're taking the equivalent of a lane of traffic. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Next, we're really hitting the entire state today. Has been Manny Cox, a program manager from the Bristol District, to come up and talk about the Coalfields Expressways, and if you would say out what ADHS is, because we were talking earlier about acronyms, Quarter Q, what those two projects, how they're different and how they're similar. So, Mandy, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner and Director and members of the board, for allowing me to share with you today. This presentation has been developed just to provide you with a programmatic overview of these two transportation initiatives in the Bristol District, and we are on the opposite end of the spectrum from the previous presentation. These transportation initiatives are to promote economic development. This overview, I'll provide you with an overview how we're moving forward with the development of these two transportation initiatives using a very unique construction methodology that we call coal synergy. I'll provide you with an overview of the procurement status, the environmental status, and then the status of each individual construction segments for each of these two transportation initiatives. I wanted to start out with a visual that shows how these two transportation initiatives are located in southwestern Virginia. You'll see the green on your screen represents the Coalfields Expressway, which is designated as U.S. Route 121. The Coalfield Expressway is a multi-state transportation initiative. It extends from US 23 in Wise County near Pound, across Wise, Dickinson, and Buchanan counties to the Virginia-West Virginia state line. It is multi-state system that extends into West Virginia another 65 miles and ties to Interstates 64 and 77. The orange in that visual represents Corridor Q. Corridor Q is part of the Appalachian Development Highway System. That system extends 127 miles in Virginia. It extends from Interstate 81 in Christiansburg all the way to the Kentucky-Virginia state line here on your screen, and then it extends on north into Kentucky for 17 miles and eventually ties to 23. One thing that I wanted to show you on this, this duly designated section that I'm pointing to on the overhead, that is green and orange. That is a 7-mile section that is duly designated as U.S. Route 121 and 460, and it encompasses 3 separate construction projects in these two initiatives. So what is Corridor Q? Corridor Q is part of the Appalachian Development Highway System. That Appalachian Development Highway System is a network of corridors within the 13-state Appalachian region. It is the centerpiece of the Appalachian Regionals Commission initiative to promote social and economic development in the 13-state Appalachian region. As I said previously, there's 127 miles in Virginia, this corridor, but of those 127 miles, they're all complete except for 14. Of those 14 that remain uncompleted in Virginia, they all lie in Buchanan County, as shown in the previous map. 2 of those are completed to rough grade with our Hawks Nest construction segment. We have 7 miles under construction right now with our construction projects designated as 460 Connector Phase 1 and 460 Connector Phase 2. And the only 5 miles that are remaining to get under contract are in the negotiation stage right now for preliminary engineering design. As I said, this is a multi-state corridor. Kentucky has 17 miles in their state, and 16 of their miles are currently under construction. The funding for this Appalachian Development Highway Corridor is 100% funding through MAP 21, which was signed into law in 2012. Prior to that time, it required a 20% state match. Moving ahead, MAP 21 stands for Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century. Prior to that time, the 13-state region had about $2 billion of unobligated ARC funding that was designated only for these corridors because of these 13 states' inability to match. So part of that Moving Ahead for Progress was to jumpstart the economy and to get these $2 billion on the ground. This 100% federal funding for these corridors only lasts through 2021. Also with MAP 21, it required every Appalachian state in that 13-state region to submit a completion plan for the corridors within their states. Virginia, Department of Transportation submitted that last year to the Appalachian Regional Commission for Congress with the intent of completing these next 14 miles by 2021. Now, for the green transportation initiative that was on that original slide, that is called the Coalfields Expressway. As I said, it's designated as U.S. Route 121. It is a congressional high priority corridor. It is also part of the National Highway System. We have subdivided the construction of that transportation initiative into 8 construction segments. We have 2 miles to rough grade. That is the Hawks Nest section, and it is also part of that 7-mile duly designated section. We have another 12 miles under preliminary engineering design. That's our Pound connector and our Doe Branch sections. And Pound is partially funded, and you can see Doe is fully funded. We have another 20 miles of that 50-mile corridor that we're negotiating the preliminary engineering design on. And 2 of those projects are part of that duly designated section. That would be the 460 CFX connection. It is an intersection that we're developing, and then that last 4.5-mile Poplar Creek section. Coalfields Expressway provides regional connectivity, not only within the state, as shown in this visual, the 3 counties in southwestern Virginia, but it also provides connectivity to Interstate 77 and 64 in West Virginia as it extends on through that state, and then ties to 23, which eventually ties to Interstate 26 in Tennessee. This regional connectivity is a must for this region to break the isolation of southwestern Virginia. This region right here has a decline in annual decline in population at a rate of 0.25% per year. The poverty rate is twice that of the rest of the Commonwealth, and our young folks are leaving because there are no jobs. So it is a great need to complete these to promote economic development. We had a economic impact analysis done on this corridor last year, which showed a return on our investment of $3 for every dollar spent on this corridor. So we're moving forward with both of these transportation initiatives using what we call coal synergy. Coal synergy was birthed in West Virginia. Coal synergy reduces the construction costs for the rough grade development of the roadbed by 45%. It does this by partnering with firms, our private sector partners who are coal companies that have large-scale earth-moving equipment, and we utilize their construction techniques that are common to the mining industry. It also utilizes incidental coal that's recovered within the excavation and construction of the roadway, and those coal reserves are sold to offset the construction costs. It also, Coal Synergy also provides flat developable land in this steep terrain where there is very little flat developable land. This slide right here is a economic development site. It's called the Southern Gap Development Site. It's located in Buchanan County, adjacent to that duly designated section I showed you on that first slide. This site was developed through Coal Synergy. It was left as an economic development site through the permitted mining operation for Buchanan County. Buchanan County invested in this site with the intent of the infrastructure of Quarter Q and coal fields coming through. This is a 1,300-acre site compared to the 90 acres in their entire county is all they have, just because of the steep terrain. They are working with the Appalachian Regional Commission right now to finish the local access road that will tie this development site to Quarter Q. They have it partially paved, and they're working with ARC to get the rest of that paved. This is just the visual on your right is an aerial that shows just phase one of this three-phase development site. It already has a call center that employs 320 people. There are 7 homes. There's recreational. There's a ball field, a fairgrounds, and a small racetrack. And there are other industrial sites there. This site has water, sewer, electric, and fiber optics, and they are also working on phase 2 of this development site, which is adjacent to air right-of-way on Quarter Q, to get the utilities into that site as well. This is the same visual that I showed you at the onset of this presentation, but this visual shows you how these 2 quarters, we have broken it down into several construction segments. Of course, I told you earlier, Quarter Q, we have 5 construction segments, and CFX, we have 8 construction segments. One thing that I would note on this visual is the dark blue, and which is our Crane's Nest section, and that purple, which is our Elkins Branch section. We will be further subdividing these into smaller sections to facilitate financing. Another thing I'd like to point out here is the dark green. I'll kind of point to it here. It's right in the middle. This is that local IDA road that will be tied to the Southern Gap Development site that I showed you on the previous slide. Now, the procurement vehicles that we're using to move forward with these transportation initiatives, we are using 3. The first procurement vehicle we're using is a triple P contract for all of coal fields, including those 3 duly designated sections of Quarter Q. One thing about that, as you can see on your screen, we are in different stages of development with each of those construction segments, and we're advancing those in either preliminary engineering, development to rough grade using that Coal Synergy approach, and then development to the final grade, which would be that pavement section. And we're doing this so that we limit our obligation on these projects to only the work that's being done at the time. The other procurement vehicle that we are using is traditional design build. The 460 connector phase 1 job that's currently under construction is a traditional design build, and we have a proposed final grade construction project that we will intend to use a traditional design build for that project as well. We also have a unique sole source design build using Coal Synergy project that was approved last year, and that is now under contract. Now, the environmental status for both of these transportation initiatives, we had NEPA documents that were previously approved. But in order to capitalize on Coal Synergy and be able to move these forward, because we could not afford to move these forward, we moved them slightly to align with our Coal Synergy partners' ownership and control of mineral. And so we had to go back and reevaluate these documents. The Coalfields Expressway, that 50-mile corridor, we worked with the Federal Highway Administration to break that up into 5 separate reevaluation segments based on independent utility and logical termini. 3 of those have already been approved, and we're continuing to work with them on the other 2. That would be Section 2 and 3B. And we're also working with the Corps of Engineers as we move through the reevaluation of those documents to make sure that we have a permittable project once the NEPA documents complete. The two other quarter Q projects, the 460 connector phase 1 and 2, those are, the NEPA documents for those have already been approved, and we have permitting for the 460 connector phase 1 is already in full-blown construction, and then the permitting process for that second project, phase 2, it's ongoing now. Actually, the 404 permit is public available. It's on public notice, and we anticipate no problems with that 404 permit for that project. Now, the rest of my presentation breaks each of these constructions down and provides you with a lot of detail about each one. I didn't intend to go over each of these, only that you have them in your presentations for future information should you need it. But I did want to scroll down and show you a visual on our hawk's nest, which is red in this visual, and then this is a photograph of what that 2 miles to rough grade looks like using coal synergy. The right-of-way adjacent to this roadway is that Southern Gap development site, and the Buchanan County IDA road that I pointed out will be tying in at a T intersection here to quarter Q. I also wanted to show you a photograph of our 460 connector phase 1 bridge. You may not know, but this is the bridge that connects quarter Q to the Virginia-Kentucky state line, where they're continuing to work on quarter Q in Kentucky. This bridge will be complete in 2015. You may not know, but this is the tallest bridge in the Commonwealth, but only for a short time, because the Poplar Creek section, that last section of quarter Q, will supersede this. This is over 250 feet tall. The Poplar Creek section will be 310. And it will be 2,000 feet long. So you can see really with this visual the type of terrain that we're dealing with to get from ridge to ridge, or the kind of construction or excavation that we have to do in this terrain. And that's what makes Coal Synergy such a great partnership and viable opportunity for the taxpayers to move at such a reduced cost. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any questions from anyone on the board?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm counting 5 state parks in this area on a map. Are we sensitive to that part of the economy?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Connors, we are. Part of the NEPA documents are to evaluate things of that nature. And not only are we being sensitive to that and we're not impacting those parks, we're actually providing a connection to one of the parks that you may have on your screen now, and that's the Breaks Interstate Park. That's a multi-state park right on the Kentucky-Virginia border. We have broke access on this limited access facility to provide access to that park for future tourism in that region. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. Thank you again, Mandy.
Thank you.
She's been managing this program, the 460 project group running, and doing a fantastic job for us. Has a great understanding of the coal industry, coming from mining engineering background. It's been wonderful in leading this project. So again, thank you to you and the team.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Any tobacco commission money contributing to this?
No, sir.
There is one other quarter in Virginia, quarter H, but at this time we're not moving forward with that. It's essentially the extension of, I guess it's 55 from Stroudsburg in West Virginia. The board, by motion some years ago, directed not to proceed forward with that as long as we were working on the quarter to align, which will take us out another 6 to 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna change the order of things a bit since, Mr. Lane's not back. If we could, Kevin, are you good with, number 5?
Sure.
All right, if we could bring number 5, Railside Industries Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. Good to be before you again today. I want to talk a little bit about, I've got 5 and 6 I can run through very quickly for you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Railside Industries Incorporated is a continuation of the Howe Feed and Fertilizer Company that started up in Weir's Cave, Virginia. This is a great opportunity here for us where we can see where some local business entrepreneurs got together. The Greater Shenandoah Valley Railroad is actually a development corporation of partnership companies such as Railside Industries, who is an owning partner of the interest out in the Shenandoah Valley Railroad, as well as the new siding that's coming up in the project location is a continuation of an operation that currently provides road salt to VDOT for distribution, as well as some other transloading opportunities. Under this project, the applicant has requested $225,000. This project will support the agricultural industry through Cargill and other growers for soybeans. These soybeans will be grown in the upper Shenandoah Valley and then brought to Railside Industries and then loaded into covered hopper cars. What they're looking for is 1,100 feet of track to be constructed and served by one of the short lines that we have in Virginia, as I mentioned, the Shenandoah Valley Railroad. 250 annual carloads will be added to a 1,200 carload existing throughput. This is an unheard of number of cars in total for the short line railroad. This has been a very successful operation Railside has. $1.5 million total estimated project investment. $450,000 will be the project construction cost for the rail, as well as 2 jobs will be created on site in addition to the trucking operation that will be coming and bringing the materials in for transload. The applicant scores 59 of 100 points. Just for your information at your place, I provided just an overview of the Rail Industrial Access Program in summary, especially to you new members, and those coming to the board will have that before them. Anything over 50 points, we recommend approval to the board. Railside Industries will continue to move forward with this project. I've given you the overview of the company already. It also continues to foster and grow agriculture in the northern Shenandoah Valley, as soybeans is a crop rotation crop for corn, which is also used locally at the 2 feed mills up in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So there we are, Mr. Vice Chairman. Before you is Railside Industries. This is just a briefing today. We'll be coming back next month for an action item at the Commonwealth Transportation Board's action meeting next month.
Any questions?
All right.
We have one.
Oh, one question. I'm sorry.
I'm not familiar with this company. How big an enterprise is this?
Well, Howe Feed and Fertilizer started as a small kind of mom-and-pop operation in Weir's Cave, Virginia. They've also been part of the solution for Purina, who does Golden Cat, the cat chow litter box clay operation. And you'll have to forgive me, it's in the West Point area. They actually do the transload of bentonite, which is brought in as part of the manufacturing process at Doswell, Virginia. So they continue to grow. This will be the 3rd operation that they have expanded by rail. And they're also a large, as I said, a large supplier of road salt for distribution to the district offices for VDOT up and down the Shenandoah Valley. Thank you.
And Kevin, if you could also speak to item 6.
All right, very good. This is HGAC LLC to be located in King George County, Virginia. This proposed project location is right on Route 3. It's on the Dahlgren branch of CSX's RF&P subdivision. It's off the main beaten railroad, which is good. It's out near Birchwood, the greenhouse company, and at that end of that piece of railroad. Since it's off of their main line, it will not provide additional congestion to the Richmond-Washington corridor because the local goes off the main at that point. This is an application for $450,000, construction of almost a mile of track, 4,200 linear feet of track. Again, it's off of CSX's Dahlgren branch. It's the consolidation of 2 Virginia operations. HGAC operates steel rebar operations in 2 locations here in Virginia. We're competing with another state to retain this industry as it runs through what they call an industrial reconfiguration of both their manufacturing and operating practices that they have on those 2 facilities. In the applicant details, they have 1,000 rail cars a year they plan to run out there. $12 million in estimated project investment. This is a greenfield site development. They will close 2 plants in Virginia and open this plant, hopefully in Virginia at this location. $800,000 estimated cost for the rail construction, 10 new jobs. This project scored 64 of 100 points. Again, anything over 50 points is recommended by the board policies and procedures as they come to the board from the department. This is a critical project that needs rail. So rail is part of the driving force of the economic development and reinvestment in Virginia. As well as I mentioned, we are competing for other locations outside of Virginia for this project to move forward. We hope that we can move forward with this as a briefing today, bringing this back to the board next month for action. Are there any questions, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board?
Thank you, Mr. Page. And we have another item in the action that we're actually going to pull. So this one we're supposed to bring forward for action
Next meeting, yes, sir. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. You say, what's the total investment for 10 jobs?
It's $12 million. It's quite an automated plant. So they're making rebar for bridges and other reinforcement bars for concrete practices.
But our investment is $450.
Yes, sir. Our investment will be $450. It's a $12 million private investment. I believe, if I remember correctly, I'm shooting out of memory now. I pulled it off.
Kevin, is there other economic packages being offered by the Commonwealth to get them here? Or is this
I'm unaware as to whether the Governor's Opportunity Fund is involved in this. I do know that the local government that's with us on this project has endorsed this project and will be moving forward with some incentives that I don't think are exactly public yet. Mm-hmm.
It should be noted as well, just as a matter of overview about the program. One of the justifications for the program is economic costs, but it's also about reducing cargoes on the roads. And so the transportation benefits are part of the justifications for this program. So just to clarify.
Yes, Ms. Tom.
Thank you. Did you say we're going to vote on this next month? We're going to bring this back next month?
Yes, ma'am.
Competition for this. Is there a reason why we're waiting a month?
We're waiting a month. We actually had this on the agenda for last month. We pulled it, and then we're coming back with the briefing this month. According to the investors and also the venture, that they were comfortable with the 30-day wait period. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Anything else from Mr. Page? Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think we're going to stop here because we catch a bus at 4:30. But I did want to, first of all, let me apologize for not being here. I guess my ex just about right about 49. So, I did want to bring out for all your questions. I mean, the board feel comfortable. We know where we're in that regard. Okay, great. And same with the Coalfield project, Coalfield project. Did we go through that? We did. Yeah. In other words, understanding, the reclamation, and all that stuff. Okay, good. So tomorrow, what we'll do is I want to go through the briefing on 460 with you, which I did with the Appropriations Committee. And as part of that, and I'll let you think about this tonight, I'm going to also ask for a recommendation from the board. The reason I wanted 29 and Coalfield and Route 460. Of course, we've already completed the downtown Midtown tunnel. You know, there's some controversy with that. We lowered the tolls. And we're going to bring up Interstate 66 here in the next probably few months. And I do not think that the CTB is informed enough or is involved enough in these P3 funds. So I'm going to ask for a resolution, and we're working on, I'll get the wording to you, but that basically work with the P3 office, and we set up a group of us, we can talk about how much, that works with the P3 office, that will, with the overall objective is to increase transparency and to increase competitive bidding until the end. And then how this group can be involved without hurting proprietary information, without hurting the private sector wanting to be involved. I think it can be accomplished. That's why I wanted you to hear all this, because that's what I want. Is that so as we set up new projects, we're much more briefed and informed before being asked to allocate money for this project. So that's, besides having a new member, that's where I'm going with all this refreshing, because I think, and I'll go into this in more detail tomorrow, there really is no good reason why we are where we are. We are where we are, but there's no good reason why we're here. So I want to make sure that we address that. So, all right, well, if there any more questions for today? Okay, if not, then we'll adjourn today. What time are we normally here?
We're going to have breakfast in this room at 8 o'clock, and our meeting starts at
8:30, so we'll complete the rest of the workshop. I don't know if we'll have a fairly lengthy public comment on this today. So we'll go into public comment, and then we'll do the action items tomorrow. Anyway, and I again apologize for being out of the room, but I'll tell you what I'll do when we have time. Oh, yeah. Do you have time to change? You can dress comfortably?
Yes.
15 minutes. I will tell you, believe me, I will have to change. Sure.